Teammates, we are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the show. Great to have you. To my regular listeners, you already know I get down, man. I'm the teamwork guy. I'm your one and only Move Swiftly speaker, giving you a perspective on teamwork that you will not get anywhere else. And today I have yet another. It's like we're on a series, man. I have yet another one of my fellow co-authors from the Six Figure Athlete. Again, read the book, her story touched me. And again, it's one of those things where I feel like I'm reading my story, and it's great. Just shout out to Taj and the team, man, for actually putting this incredible piece of literary work together. So with all that, Miss Janet Connor, welcome to the Move Swiftly podcast. How are you?
Hey, I am great. Thank you so much for having me today.
All right, let's just jump right into it, because there's so many things in your story that I want to get to, because you talked about how you as an athlete, it was softball, correct?
Yes.
Well, softball and indoor track, if I'm not mistaken. Softball and indoor
that
track.
That is correct.
Yep. Yeah, softball and indoor track. And you spoke about, like, one of the things that really struck me about your story is how you are able to take the things that you learned as an athlete and apply them in a very quick way. Like, a lot of people talk about, as an athlete, you work hard, teamwork, this, that, and the third. But you told a story about how I guess there was a plane or something like that wasn't supposed to go, and you had to make the decision immediately to take a taxi, and you're able to save a lot of people's jobs, and you were able to do a lot of great things. So I think the best way to start off this conversation is just kind of walk us through your athletic playing career, where you started, and how you were able to transition. Just sort of walk us through your athletic playing career.
Yeah, you bet. Well, as you mentioned, softball was really my main sport, really forever. It's always been my first love. But I did dabble in track and field just a little bit as a long and triple jumper. So I was fortunate enough in college to have the opportunity to try to do two sports, but I got to tell you, that didn't last very long. Two sports is really difficult at that level. So it was pretty quickly apparent to me that softball needed to be my main area of focus. And I was fortunate to play all 4 years, really started from day one as a core member of my team with a couple other classmates of mine. And we really built this team around ourselves over 4 years. Just an incredible experience of seeing the team go and grow each and every year, getting better and better and better till we ended up being a Hall of Fame inductee as a team. Our entire team.
I saw that.
Inducted.
Yeah, I read your blog. this morning. I saw that. What school was it?
At the time, it was called the University of Missouri at Rolla, and they have since rebranded or renamed the university, and it's now Missouri University of Science and Technology, or Missouri S&T.
Okay. Okay, go. I didn't mean to cut you off, but go ahead.
No worries. Yeah, so I
And by the way, that happens on the show because, and again, I cut you off again, but this is what happens on the show. This is, again, for you listeners, as you guys who regularly listen, this is all organic conversation. There's no prep. We just go at it. And when people start talking my language, Janet, I get excited, I get going, and sometimes I don't have a filter. So when you start talking that Hall of Fame stuff, it's like, it's crazy to me, because I came up as a football player, and I know the attention we used to get on campus. However, as a softball player, you don't get that kind of notoriety. So, in many ways, one of my first jobs out of college was actually, I was a scout for a company named National Scouting Report, and I would go recruit, girls sports, softball, volleyball, all those things. And I got it, talking to especially former softball players, it gives me an opportunity to see what life was like on that side. So I wanted to make sure the listeners understood how important what it is you do is. So go ahead.
Yeah, no one was asking for my autograph, that's for sure.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, as you know, playing sports at that level, you're surrounded by people who really have a lot of the same skill sets as you do. You're surrounded with people who are driven. You're surrounded by people that have a lot of discipline. They've got goals. And so oftentimes, I just don't think that athletes maybe recognize how special some of the skills that they have really are in the workplace. They're really a lot more rare than maybe we think that they are, because we're surrounded by so many great people who have those same skills. So I got really passionate about being able to help athletes understand, man, you guys really do have something special going on that can be used across the board, regardless of what career you pursue. You know this, we learn so many more skills beyond just throwing a ball, catching a ball, running and jumping. We learn things that are immediately applicable in so many scenarios. And really, since I've started thinking about it, I notice things every single day that I can point back to some experience that I had as an athlete and say, that's where this came from, or I've felt this before, or I've done this before.
Yes, and actually, just because you said that, I pulled it up because I have this paragraph in your chapter highlighted it, and I wanna read it for the listeners, and I'll give you an opportunity to respond. It says, given the tendency, it should come as no surprise that after starting a career in healthcare IT, I found myself in a project management role with a project team of nearly 100 individuals across various companies, vendor, client, third party. I always saw my responsibility as chief communication officer on project. Wow. Please, can you just kind of fill in the blanks there, because you're in college, you're learning all these things, but again, a lot of the listeners know college ends and there's a transition, there's a difficult transition, I'm sure, when it comes to you having to let go of that sport, especially with softball, where there really isn't, if you could correct me if I'm wrong, but there isn't a pro league that you can actually make a living off of, or there may be pro leagues, but there's definitely no NFL or NBA dream as you're playing. So speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, that's correct. And I think there's a lot of other athletes who resonate with that. College really is the end of the line for the vast majority of us. Now there's rec and there's slow pitch, which was really not for me. I did
Right,
try it, but and I think most athletes experience that too. It's been your identity for so long when you're at the college level, or even at the high school level. For a lot of folks, that's who they are. They've always been looked at as, you're the athlete, you're the jock, you're the football player, you're the basketball player, whatever you are. And it can be really challenging when you go now and into something new as your profession, and no one really cares anymore if you're a great athlete, or if you worked out that day, or if you lifted your weights. No one's there doing that anymore.
1000%. Yes, 1000%. And it's like I was just telling a previous guest, it happens so fast, Janet. Like you're one day, it's one day.
Literally
and then
one day.
Yeah, your whole life is committed to this one day. The game's over, and boom, people are just going off with their normal lives, and all this work that you put in since you were a kid, man. A kid. It's like, where do we go now? Where do we go now? It's a very, very difficult transition, and it's not something that is easy by any means.
Yeah, and I think too often, I went to a school that was highly focused on STEM fields. So most of my classmates were engineers. And when you're playing sports, you oftentimes don't get to take opportunities like internships. I can't take a semester off and go do something. And so you almost feel like you're entering the workforce at a disadvantage, which is absurd, because the time and energy that you put into your sport and all of these other skills, and you kind of get to a point where you feel like, wow, was that all wasted time? And so my message is, it was absolutely not all wasted time. And it's my message to athletes, and it's my message to employers and people who are hiring as well.
But how were you able to find that kind of that sweet spot? Once the playing career ended and you hung up the cleats, what was your immediate next move? Like, let's say there's a college grad listening to you now, or they read your book. What would you recommend their next move would be? What was yours?
My next move, I have to be honest in that I feel like I floundered maybe a little bit in my first couple of years out of college. I went the coaching route. I got very quickly hired on by a local high school to help coach their softball team. I wasn't ready to let go of the sport just yet necessarily. And so I did that. But if I'm being honest, coaching is not really my calling. So that also took a moment for me to be able to let go the sport of softball, of saying, this is no longer going to be a really big part of my life. I've done some other things to help still foster that sense of competition and training. I did a couple of half marathons, which I really, really liked.
No kidding. I'm doing my first one. I'm doing my first half marathon in less than 48 hours this weekend on
Oh my
April 8th.
goodness, you're gonna
Yeah.
crush it.
Yes. I mean, the goal is to do a full one in 24, the Miami Marathon. I'm in South Florida, so the goal is to do the Miami Marathon. So man, it's like a brand new sport, though. I didn't realize the craze it really is. It's like I'm playing again, Janet, to be honest with you. I did not know how like passionate some people really are. There's marathoners, people running all over the continent. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's like a brand new thing for me. I like found my second love
It is,
outside of football.
it's an individual sport, but you find
Yeah.
that sense of community very quickly with runners.
Yes, real quickly. And I'm learning, man, because you get humble too, because you get a lot of older folks out there kicking your ass. It's like, oh, okay. Oh, okay. Those football player instinct starts coming out. So I love the competition, but I love the competitive edge. So
Yeah, and for me, I think I'm not super competitive with other people necessarily, but I get really competitive when I've set a goal for myself. And
yes.
I love just having a straight up training plan. Day one, do this, day two, do that. I fall in love with the process of things. I fall in love with training. I fall in love with setting those goals. And then there's nothing like crossing that finish line. I'm actually really excited for you to experience that here in a couple days.
Oh, yes. Oh, I'll definitely keep you posted. It's crazy that I didn't even know that about you. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's still looking for those ways to keep activity and keep that competition sort of a part of my life. And I did a couple, they were fun, they were fine. I just don't think it's something my body wants to do long term in the running world. But as I went into project management, and I do have to say I was sort of pushed into project management by a leader at my company who said, I think this is a challenge you could take on and do a really good job at. And it is never anything I would have raised my hand for. So I'm very thankful that I've had sort of that coach around me, even off of the field, who has said, I think you're ready for something bigger here. Go give this a try, and we'll give you all the support in the world. And in that project management role, I really did find, again, that sense of teamwork, all of the things that I said that I love, right? There's a process to follow. There's a project plan. I'm going to keep everybody on task. We're all going to play our parts. We're all going to do our roles. And at the end of the day, we're all going to celebrate together. And there's no feeling like it. And that's how I've been able to find some of the same feelings and emotions that I had as a softball player here in the world.
No, but when you mentioned the person that recommended that you get into, and if you're listening, shout out to you, because that's a great thing as well. But what did they see in you? How does a person, what did they say about you that said, man, this role would be for you? Because like you mentioned, you're in this place where you're coaching softball, but you're starting to feel like you're losing a grip on it. It's not that I know that feeling, because I coached high school for 2 seasons, and it's not the same as a player at all. What kinds of things did they see in you?
I can still remember almost word for word. He called me into his office and he said, I get the sense that you're bored. He said, I don't think I don't think I'm challenging you enough. And he said, I see a lot of your knowledge and your talents and your skills. And he even said, I don't think I'm leveraging them to the fullest extent. And so that's when he just said, what would you think about trying out project management? And I was just really taken aback, because again, it was not the path that I was on. It was nothing I had ever expressed that I wanted to go do. But I was really, really thankful that he put me out there. And I don't think I would have taken a leap that big on my own.
Right. I guess the next question now would be for the listeners. And what exactly is like a project management? What's like your day-to-day like? Because when you go to college, that's not, you major in certain things and you're like, hey, I'm a major in sociology. I'm a major. I mean, I just had Reed on, who's also a co-author. He said, I majored in eligibility. I majored in just staying eligible. What kinds of things, would you like to tell former athletes if they're kind of lost and they're looking for help? What is your day-to-day like?
Well, it's interesting you talk about some of those majors, because I think the majority of people on my project teams, their majors were all over the board as well. And so I think what I learned in that process is, again, those transferable skills are not things that you study in a classroom. They're things that you learn by living life and by having experiences. And so, for me, again, it was that teamwork sort of quality. It was the communication across the board. What I would tell to a listener, this is the advice I give to a lot of people.
Right.
Figure out two things. Figure out what you're good at and figure out what you like doing. And then give leaders that you trust an opportunity to see you do those things. They are going to likely know what might be a next great step for you. I know in my career, very few times have I looked at a specific person or job and said, oh, that's the next thing that I want to go do. I want that person's role, or I want this role. Most of the work that I have done in my 20 years since I've quit playing, I don't know how that's possible, but most of the work that I've
Yeah,
done,
I'm telling you, it goes by fast.
goes so
I hear you on
fast.
that.
But most of the work that I've done has been because someone has sort of tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, I have this opportunity and I think you'd be a really good fit for it. And so I don't know that you necessarily have to know exactly what you think your plan or your next step or your trajectory is. Again, if you're confident in what you're good at and what you like doing, and you surround yourself with great people that you trust, I really have a lot of faith that the right opportunities are gonna find you.
Right. And I think we have to clarify something here. When she says what you're good at, it doesn't necessarily mean, oh, you could run a 40 in 4.5 or whatever. Okay. That's just natural talent. Being good at something is you started at, maybe you ran a 5.2 and then you worked hard and now you run a 4 something. So you were good at work ethic. You were good at your nutrition. You were good at staying disciplined. You were good at these transferable skills. But your natural ability that a lot of you athletes rest on, that your natural just giftedness, just it's something that is not going to transfer over. Just as it is important to talk about the things that are transferable, understand being 6'5" is not necessarily going to guarantee you a job. Just because the world has praised you for being 6'5" or however big you are and your natural ability, that does not necessarily mean it's going to transfer to you and transfer over into your work life. So I want to make sure we clarify that for the athletes, because a lot of them, man, you're so good at getting from one base to another, and then they kind of rest on that. So the work ethic, I think, too, is something that we really, really have to emphasize as well.
Yeah, and there are a lot of skills there that, again, can help differentiate you from other athletes. If you think about, okay, how did I get good at running the bases? Maybe you were really disciplined. Maybe you do have a great work ethic. Maybe you're really great at building relationships and you partnered with someone who was awesome at base running and they coached you because they liked you or they trusted you or they supported you. So I think for every athlete, if you really take some time and say, well, gosh, how did I get so good at my sport? Or what made me a great teammate? Or what made me coachable? Those are the answers to the question of what am I good at?
And I had to learn that the hard way, because like I mentioned, when I scouted right out of college. The company was known for girl sports. Football was my thing. So I had to go to people like you and say, what should I be looking for? What is it about that's going to make a great softball player? And then they told me, look, to someone that's running the bases, that can catch, that can do a lot of different things. And that's when I realized, okay, my research and my tenacity and my ability to go out and ask questions, that's what I became good at. And those were the things that helped me build what I'm building now. So these are very important lessons, guys. And again, I'm telling you this because I know nowadays colleges they're enticing you with money. And as players, it can become very, very difficult to find your true passion if you're picking a school based on who can pay you. And now it's a situation where you're wondering where you should go. It becomes a very challenging time, I'm sure, when it comes to the decision of what school you should pick.
Man, it's got to be overwhelming these days too.
Yeah.
I'm kind of glad it was 20 years ago that I went through all of this.
Yeah,
What
right. Yeah, you
some of
just
the
you went and
distraction?
you played and you got the skills, but there wasn't all this like business surrounded it.
Yeah.
So can you kind of tell people, I want to be very respectful of your time, can you just, before you get out of here, can you tell people what's next, what's coming on the pipeline? Is there another book? What can we expect to see from the Miss Janet Connor?
Man, that is such a great question. This book has really sparked this passion in me of, again, helping people translate what made them good at a sport or what made them a good athlete and translate that to how can that make me good at my next phase of life. I have started a website. It is the6figureathlete.com. So you can always get your book there if you don't have it already. Although all of you
Please get
guys
the
have
book,
it already.
get the book, please. I mean, I've had I'm missing, listen, Kendra Brim and Michelle Meyer. If you're listening, you're the only ones left, or you're the only ones left who have not been on the Move Swiftly podcast. Kendra, I know, we DM'd, but Michelle, we got to get in touch, right, for sure.
Yeah, get after it, everybody.
Yeah, it's gonna be great, man, to have all 11 of us on the same show. So it's gonna be fun.
Yeah,
But go ahead.
Yeah, and if you check out the website, I've called my blog, I've named it The Dugout. That's where a lot of the deep conversations happen and where a lot of the self-discovery and exploration happens for a baseball or softball player. So as I am starting to notice some of those skills I learned from the field translating into my professional life, I'm trying to write those down. I'm trying to share some stories on that blog. And it's just so that folks can maybe go out there and start to get a sense of what those skills look like in real life and start to say, oh, yes, I have some of those skills. I now maybe see how I could apply that somewhere else. So I'm hopeful that that's a great collaborative space. I hope that people can go and draw some inspiration and some ideas from there. And I hope to continue to engage with other former athletes and we can share ideas and just get them out into the world, because I think sometimes we feel like we're starting at a bit of a disadvantage in our careers. Maybe not having had some of the internship or work experience opportunities that others have had. But I think if we really dig deep and think about our experience as athletes, I think it's pretty clear, and your listeners would probably all agree that we are in fact a lot further along than maybe we realize we are.
Yes, we definitely are. We definitely are. But there's always room for improvement. And what would be the best way for people to reach out and get in touch with you?
LinkedIn is probably the best place to find me. So I'm Janet Connor, and it's Conner. Everybody always gets that one mixed up. So Janet Connor, come and find me on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Or again, that's also linked from the website, the6figureathlete.com.
All right, cool. And I will make sure I include all that in the show notes as well. And Janet, the final thing I do to close out all the shows is I want you to use your imagination, and you're the Janet Connor now, the current one, the 2023 version of Janet Connor. I want you to go back to when you just finished playing and you had to accept that you weren't going to play. Actually, go back to those years in which you were coaching and you felt lost. You didn't know what was next. And I want you to pretend that version of Janet has come into the meeting room, and I just want you to talk to her, give her some words of encouragement, and we'll officially close with that.
Oh man, I think the biggest message I would say is don't be afraid to take big risks and don't be afraid to try something hard. You've done a lot of hard things in your life, and you're going to continue to excel and soar and crush hard things in the future. So don't be afraid of them. Go get them.
Oh, yes. Short and sweet. I love that, man. I love that. All right. Fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.